14 years. That's how long I and countless others had to wait for the announcement of Shenmue 3. 14 long years. 14 years of not knowing anything. 14 years of hopelessness. But in that time, some of us still held on. We sat patiently, waiting, jumping at every glimmer of possibility. Maybe a rumor from some obscure Australian gaming magazine, or a Yu Suzuki interview where the inevitable Shenmue question was brought up. We waited with bated breath for the game, but year after year, our hopes were crushed or met with silence. That was until E3 2015, when the first notes of the Shenmue theme song started playing on Sony's E3 stage. I think I'm not alone when I say that I felt beyond excited. It was a literal dream come true. I and many others were overjoyed, but we found that our path to Shenmue 3 wasn't over yet. Yu Suzuki stepped on the stage to announce the Kickstarter to Shenmue 3. And I, along with 69,320 Shenmue fans, put our money where our mouths were. So just like Shenmue 1 broke the record for most expensive game ever made during its time, Shenmue 3 broke records for raising its first million in 44 minutes, and its second million in under 9 hours. All in all, we mustered over 6 million for the game, and after 4 more years of waiting, Shenmue 3 is finally looming on the horizon, set to be released November 19th of 2019. And I think it's fair to say that I'm very excited for the game, so I thought it would be a good idea to analyze the first 2 games with the intention of revisiting Shenmue's story for those who don't quite remember it, and seeing if we can capture exactly what makes this game so special. Oh, and I just want to nail this in, by the way. Shenmue came out 1 year after Ocarina of Time. Can you believe that? So, join me as I take you through my favorite game, Shenmue. Shenmue is a story of revenge. You play as Ryo Hazuki, a young martial artist who returns home one day to find a mysterious black car parked outside his house, and the sign to his dojo smashed in 2. Ryo runs onto his property to his dojo, where he finds his father, surrounded by men in black suits, with one mysterious man at the head of the operation. A man with long black hair, wearing a silky green robe. You rush in but are quickly held back by the goons. The man asks your father, "Where is the mirror?" And your father says that he has no intention of telling him. So the man turns to you, approaching with a cold stare. He grabs and lifts you up off the floor, threatening to kill you if your dad doesn't tell him where the mirror is. Not having a choice, your father looks up and tells the man that he buried this mirror under the cherry tree outside. Once this is confirmed and the mirror is in the possession of the mysterious man, he appears to be satisfied. The mysterious man is not yet finished, however, as he continues to ask your father if he remembers a few specific names. When your father hears those names, he looks up in shock, seemingly in disbelief. The intruder then tells your father to get up, saying that he will allow him to die like a warrior. The 2 men fight once more, but the long-haired man quickly lands a devastating blow, and your father falls to the ground. You crawl up to your dad, and he whispers his final words to you as he succumbs to his wounds, while the men make their escape in the black car. And that's how it begins. Those are the seeds that are planted at the beginning of this story to create Shenmue. A great injustice, a looming mystery, and a burning desire for revenge. And I can't think of a better motivation for getting to the bottom of this mystery. So after a short dream sequence, you're left to your own devices to try to hunt down the man who killed your father. Once you wake up, you have free rein to explore your house and the surrounding areas. Your nanny gives you an allowance on the dresser by the door every morning. Looking around the house tells a story, some spots even triggering a flashback. There are so many authentic details added to every corner of the house to make the home feel real. The kitchen is fully modeled with pots, pans, silverware, Tupperware, old cereal boxes. Walking outside, you can see a koi pond with one of those bamboo clacky thingies, which clicks at regular intervals. But for now, we need to meet up with Fuku-san, one of your father's students. He's the one you saw getting kicked out of the dojo the day of the incident. And after a brief conversation, you tell him that you're going to find your father's killer and walk off, as he whines at you not to do it. From there, you run through an area called Yamanose and ask some of the people around whether or not they saw the black car on the day of your father's murder. You walk by a nearby shrine and hear a cat meowing, and then see a young girl crouching over a box. You talk to the girl, and it turns out that the cat's mom was run over by the same black car you were looking for. She also tells you that an old man in town, Yamagashi-san, was almost run over by the same car that day too. So you decide to go ask him if he knows anything. On the way to the old man's house, I was stopped by a little old lady who asked me for help reading a home nameplate. She explained to me that her eyesight is really bad, so she was having a lot of trouble finding the Yamamoto's house. If you look 10 feet to your left, you can find it right there.
Yamamoto.
Stupid old lady. And tell her about it. She's super grateful, but gives you nothing as a reward. Really, there are a lot of side quests in this game that give you no other satisfaction besides the feeling of being a good guy. If you head up the street a little bit, you'll see Yamagashi-san tending to his plants, looking like a Japanese Jack Nicholson. He tells you that he does remember the car on that day, and that driver
was insane.
When you ask where the car was headed, Yamagashi-san tells you to head to Dabuita. That's the main town area that you'll operate in for a while. Fortunately, Dabuita's just around the corner. Head down the stairs, past a few apartment blocks. Dabuita is a little more hustle-bustle than the previous areas because it's loaded with shops, bars, and restaurants. If it looks realistic, that's because it's modeled after a real town. And it really shows, with the look of the city displaying grimy walls, wear and tear on everything, and old stuck-on poster residue. It was surreal to play through this during its time, because not only were the graphics so advanced, but the authenticity of the environment leaves you totally immersed. It's clear that a lot of care went into each store, with each one having its own unique music and completely unique placement of environmental items. If you go into a sushi restaurant, you'll see a chef slicing fish, and if you go into a Chinese restaurant, they'll be flipping stir-fry noodles in a wok. Shopkeepers will sweep up outside their shops. Some will even stand outside and bark for customers. Everything is designed to look and feel real through and through, with the elaborate and subtle animations they intersperse throughout the world. Every single NPC has a set schedule that they follow, where they are waking up, going to work, working, finishing work, and going home. And you might not go the extra mile to follow these NPCs around, but seeing them go throughout their day to day at the appropriate times is incredibly realistic. The town feels totally different between 2 p.m. and 10 p.m. This is detail that Red Dead Redemption 2 is being praised for now, that Shenmue had already accomplished almost 20 years ago. About halfway through the story, you are introduced to an entirely new area to navigate, the harbor. This is when Rio starts investigating a local street gang with some connections to the man who killed his father. While you may have your hands full already, you're also tasked with finding a job to make a little cash and hopefully get the opportunity to have a run-in with the gang. After asking around, eventually your pal Goro hooks you up with a job, a forklift job. And so begins what is essentially a fairly lengthy sequence of forklift gigs, where you take boxes from one area of the map to another area of the map, and so on and so forth until you reach your lunch break, and then you do it all again, only to wait until the next day, where you do it all again. And then you do it some more. And this is where the pace of the game shifts slightly from the earlier carefree wandering around and investigating to waking up early every day to catch a bus to show up for work. And about work, I mean, it is fun, kinda. I tell ya, I had a lot of trouble doing this efficiently as a kid, so coming back to it with an adult mind made me try a lot harder than I thought I would to get those boxes moved around. So I actually had a little fun trying to get every single crate this time around. Make sure you save every night before you go to bed though, because I made the mistake of forgetting to do so once, and I happened to lose 2 full days of work, meaning I had to replay it all again. And that was certainly mind-numbingly boring, so make sure that doesn't happen to you. So while you're working at the dock, story events will also start happening to you, generally like getting attacked by the gang or other work-related drama. From here on out, the story follows a fixed progression as you find out that Lan Di is leaving Japan for Hong Kong. So the rest of the game pretty much revolves around Rio working and saving money for his trip to Hong Kong. Shenmue was way ahead of its time, and in some sense, it still is. The narrative structure of the game is still leagues beyond what some current-day games are doing. There's an argument to be made that Rockstar has been heavily influenced by Shenmue. You see it in the way you go into first person and look at items up close, or the conversation mechanics they incorporated into LA Noire and Red Dead Redemption. Rockstar understood that what Yu Suzuki managed to create with Shenmue was an entirely new type of game. A better type of game. A game that takes its world seriously and will reward you for looking in every nook and cranny. A game that gets you emotionally invested through its plots, themes, and music, as well as the relationships you cultivate throughout the journey. Shenmue came out 1 year after Ocarina of Time. 1 year after Half-Life. Yet, looking at it now, you would have thought that it had come out of another time entirely. The game is a masterful work of art that never really got a fair shake, because video game audiences didn't know what they were getting with a game like this, probably expecting more fighting than talking or forklift operating. Limited sales of the Dreamcast didn't help matters much. Shenmue 2 did get released very shortly after 1 for Dreamcast, but it wasn't released in the United States until it was ported to Xbox in 2002. Shenmue 1 ends with Ryo leaving his hometown in a bittersweet sequence where you see Ryo walking slowly around town one last time. Depending on how you play the game, it can end on a variety of different days, and I happened to finish this playthrough on Christmas Eve, leaving me with a whole new level of melancholy for the sequence. You really do get a sensation similar to that of walking through your hometown one last time. Before stepping onto the boat to Hong Kong, you have one more confrontation with this crazy guy, and after kicking him into the freezing cold water, you depart your hometown for Hong Kong, leading us directly into the events of Shenmue 2. Shenmue 2 is a big departure from Shenmue 1 in many ways, but that is a story for another day. I always feel a little sad when I beat Shenmue 1. Maybe it's because when I was a kid, I was unable to play Shenmue 2, as it was only released on PAL European region-locked discs. So I was forced to play and replay these sequence of events until I was finally able to play Shenmue 2 on the Xbox in 2002. But if you thought waiting a few years to finally get Shenmue 2 was bad, the gap between Shenmue 2 and 3 will blow you away. Accounting for development time, it's been 19 years. So the fans of this game have likely changed a lot in that time. But when Yu Suzuki set out the signal for the Shenmue Kickstarter, we all awoke from our slumbers and put forth our money ahead of time to create what we thought would never come to be. So, should you play Shenmue? Well, it depends on what you're expecting. If you're interested in playing a underrepresented benchmark in video game history and experiencing a still unconventional gaming narrative that carved out its own rules, then yes. If, on the other hand, you thought Red Dead Redemption sucked because it was too boring, then stay far, far away from my precious Shenmue. So, I hope this little video helps some people understand why Shenmue is so special. For its time, it was insanely cutting edge, and it still has some of the most unique gameplay progression I have seen in a game. Most importantly, Shenmue is brimming with soul, and the fact that it's been overlooked in the records of video game history or written off as an expensive blip is an absolute travesty, as the game was clearly a labor of love. But I'm not complaining, because Shenmue 3 is releasing very shortly, and I'm looking forward to getting my copy. So thanks for watching the video. If you liked what you saw, feel free to check out some of my others. Like and subscribe. I'm gonna keep making these even if no one watches. I find it to be somewhat therapeutic. Leave a comment below too, and I'll try to respond to that the best I can.
some kind of TV detective or something? Back off. You little punk. You looking for some of this?